The world of Atheron was known across the galaxy for its beauty. Floating spires of crystal reached toward a golden sky, and rivers of silver light flowed through the capital city. Travelers who came from distant systems often admired the artistry of the alien world. Yet behind all the splendor was a truth less beautiful. The rulers of Atheron held their power not through wisdom, but through fear and tradition. On this particular day, the grand court of Atheron was crowded. Thousands of citizens had gathered to witness a trial. The court was built like a vast arena, open to the sky, so that the entire city could see the judgment. High platforms circled the space, and on each platform sat nobles in glittering robes. They looked down at the accused with eyes full of judgment. At the center of the court knelt Princess Leora, the youngest daughter of the late queen. She had been accused of betrayal by the ruling council, though many whispered that the charges were false. Leora had spoken openly against the corruption of the nobles, and for that, she had been silenced. The trial was only a formality. Her fate had already been chosen. The sentence was cruel. She was forced to crawl across the marble floor of the court, surrounded by the cheers and jeers of the watching crowd. It was a ritual of shame, meant to strip her of honor and remind the people what happened to those who dared challenge power. Leora lowered her eyes to the shining stone beneath. Her hands, every step forward, felt like the weight of the galaxy pressed down on her back. Her pale hair fell across her face, hiding her tears. She heard the laughter of the nobles, the whispers of the people, and the steady beat of a drum that marked her slow crawl across the arena. Among the spectators was a single human, Captain Marcus Hale. He had come from Earth as part of a small envoy. Humanity was still new to interstellar politics, and Marcus had been chosen not only for his skill as a soldier, but for his steady sense of justice. He had been told to observe, to remain silent, to respect the customs of the Atherons. Yet as he watched Leora's trembling hands press against the cold floor, he felt anger rising inside him. Marcus had seen battlefields before. He had witnessed cruelty in war. But this was different. This was not an enemy soldier facing justice. This was a young woman being humiliated for speaking the truth. To him, it was not justice at all. Leora's breath came in sharp gasps. Her knees scraped against the stone, leaving faint trails of blood. She tried to focus her mind, telling herself that pain was temporary, that her spirit could not be broken so easily. But the voices around her pierced her heart. Traitor, they called. Shameful. Unworthy of her crown. She thought of her mother, the late queen who had once ruled with fairness. What would her mother say if she saw her now, crawling like a criminal? Leora closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the sting of despair. Perhaps this was the end of her story. Then, through the haze of shame, she noticed movement in the crowd. A figure was stepping forward. The murmurs grew louder as people noticed. It was the human. Marcus pushed past the alien guards who tried to block his way. His dark uniform stood out among the bright silks of the nobles. His boots struck the marble floor with determination as he walked into the center of the court. "Stop!" one of the guards hissed, raising a weapon. "No outsider may interfere with the trial." But Marcus did not stop. His voice rang out clear and firm, carrying across the arena. "This is not justice," he said. "This is cruelty." The crowd gasped. No one had ever dared to speak against the ritual before, especially not an alien guest. The nobles rose from their seats in anger, their jeweled hands pointing down. "At Marcus! How dare a human interfere?" one shouted. "Seize him!" Marcus ignored them. He knelt beside Leora, who was too shocked to speak. Gently, without hesitation, he placed his arms beneath her and lifted her from the ground. The court fell silent. For a moment, time itself seemed to pause. The image of a human carrying the disgraced princess burned into the eyes of every spectator. "You don't have to crawl anymore," Marcus whispered to her, his voice steady. Leora stared at him, her lips trembling. No one had ever defied the court for her. No one had dared to show kindness when the world demanded shame. She could barely form words, but her eyes filled with tears of gratitude. The nobles shouted in fury, "Arrest him! Arrest them both!" Guards rushed forward, but Marcus stood tall, holding Leora close. His voice thundered across the court once more. "Justice without mercy is no justice at all. If this is the law of Atheron, then it is a law built on fear, not honor." The people in the crowd began to murmur. Some still cheered for tradition, but others looked uneasy. Deep in their hearts, many had grown tired of the cruelty of the nobles. Seeing a human, an outsider, stand up for what was right sparked something inside them. The nobles ordered the guards to strike. But Marcus shifted his stance, his soldiers' training guiding his every move. He knew he could not fight an entire army, but he also knew he would not bow. Leora clutched at his shoulder, whispering weakly, Why would you risk this? You don't even know me." Marcus looked down at her with steady eyes. "Because no one deserves to be treated this way. Not you. Not anyone." The words struck her heart like a flame in the darkness. For so long, she had felt alone, believing that no one cared about truth or fairness. But this human, this stranger, saw her not as a criminal, not as a traitor, but as a person worthy of dignity. The court grew louder as the tension built. The nobles called for order. The people shouted in confusion. The guards closed in. Yet through it all, Marcus stood tall, carrying Leora as if she were the most precious thing in the galaxy. And in that moment, something shifted. It was not just the fate of Leora or Marcus that was being decided. It was the beginning of a change that could ripple through all of Atheron. Word count target. I've written but that was 120 words worth of expanded description, dialogue, and narrative pacing compressed here into a readable flow. If you'd like, I can stretch it further with more world-building detail, the architecture, people's reactions, Leora's inner thoughts, Marcus's past on Earth, so it feels even richer and closer to exactly 1750 words. The Grand Court of Atheron had never been so silent. The nobles sat frozen on their jeweled seats, their mouths half open in shock. Citizens filled the galleries, their cheers and laughter caught in their throats. For the first time in living memory, someone had interrupted the ritual of shame. And it was not even one of their own. It was a human. Marcus Hale held Princess Leora in his arms, her trembling body pressed lightly against his chest. His face was calm, but his eyes were hard with determination. He could feel the eyes of thousands on him, but he did not flinch. "Put her down!" shouted one of the high nobles, his voice cracking with rage. "No outsider may interfere with the will of the council." Marcus's voice rose, deep and steady, carrying through the court like a war drum. "Your will is not justice. This is cruelty dressed as law. I will not let her crawl another step." The people gasped. Some covered their mouths. Others leaned forward to see this bold human more clearly. A ripple of murmurs spread through the crowd. "A human dares? He defies the council? No one has ever done this." The nobles banged their staffs against the floor, trying to restore order. "Seize him!" they cried in unison. Dozens of armored guards rushed toward Marcus, their spears glowing with crackling energy. They moved swiftly, their armor gleaming beneath the golden light of the open court. But Marcus shifted his stance, adjusting his grip on Leora. He had carried injured soldiers before, on battlefields back on Earth. He knew how to balance his weight, how to move fast while protecting someone vulnerable. "Hold on to me," he whispered to Leora. Her hands gripped his uniform tightly. She was weak, her voice barely more than a whisper. "You cannot fight them all." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Maybe not, but I won't let them drag you back into the dirt." The first wave of guards reached him. Marcus stepped back swiftly, pivoting to the side. With his free arm, he shoved one of them off balance. The guard stumbled, colliding with two others. Marcus kept moving, using speed instead of brute force. He ducked under a swinging spear and darted toward the edge of the court. The people gasped again, this time with excitement. It was as if a play was unfolding before them, a story they had never seen before. "Stop him!" shouted a noble, his jeweled crown trembling on his head. "Do not let him leave!" But Marcus did not stop. Every step he took was driven by a soldier's instinct, by training drilled into him over years of service. He knew he could not stand and fight an army. His only hope was movement. He needed to escape the court before they could surround him. Leora lifted her head slightly, her silver hair brushing against his shoulder. Her voice was weak but urgent. "There is a passage, at the far side, a hidden door near the judge's throne. My mother once showed it to me when I was a child." Marcus glanced at her. "Can you guide me?" She nodded faintly. "Left at the great pillar, then the wall beside the throne." He gave a single, sharp nod. "Then hold tight." With renewed purpose, Marcus dodged another guard and raced toward the towering stone pillar at the left side of the arena. The crowd roared, some cheering for the spectacle, others shouting in outrage. For the first time, a strange feeling stirred among the citizens of Atheron. They had always watched the ritual of shame in silence or in mockery. But now, watching this human carry the disgraced princess with such defiance, some of them felt hope. The nobles saw it too. They saw the shift in the eyes of the crowd, the spark of rebellion. And it terrified them. "Block the exits!" screamed one of the council members. "Do not let him escape with her!" Guards poured in from every side. Marcus's eyes scanned the arena. He could already see he was running out of time. He turned, sharply at the pillar, following Leora's faint directions. "There!" she whispered urgently, pointing weakly toward a section of wall near the high throne. From a distance, it looked like solid stone, but Marcus noticed faint lines where the panels joined. A door. But the guards were closing in. 10 of them moved into formation, cutting off his path. Their spears hummed as they leveled them at Marcus. Marcus adjusted his grip on Leora, lowering her weight slightly so he could free both arms. He exhaled slowly, centering himself. His training reminded him of a saying, "A soldier is not the strongest or the fastest, but the one who refuses to stop moving forward." He charged. The guards thrust their spears, but Marcus twisted his body, sideways, slipping between two shafts. He slammed his shoulder into one guard, knocking him back, then grabbed another's spear and swung it wide, striking 2 more. Leora clung to him, her eyes wide in shock and awe. The people gasped again. Many rose from their seats, shouting. Some cheered for Marcus, others cursed him. But no one could look away. Marcus broke through the line and dashed toward the hidden door. He pressed his hand against the panel, but nothing happened. "It won't open without the crest," Leora gasped. "The seal of the throne unlocks it." Marcus looked back. The high judge, an elderly noble draped in gold, sat glaring down at him from the throne. At the judge's side hung a glowing medallion, the crest. Marcus clenched his jaw. He couldn't reach the judge without being surrounded. For a moment it seemed hopeless. Then Leora lifted her hand, weak but steady. Her eyes glowed faintly, her bloodline giving her command over the old magics of Atheron. The panel shimmered, responding to her will. With a slow grinding sound, the hidden door slid open. "Go," she whispered. Marcus didn't hesitate. He slipped through the narrow opening, the door sliding shut behind them just as the guards closed in. They found themselves in a dark passage lit only by faint crystals embedded in the walls. The sounds of the court faded behind them, muffled by the stone. Marcus finally slowed, leaning against the wall to catch his breath. His chest rose and fell heavily, but his grip on Leora never faltered. He looked down at her, concern etched on his face. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head slightly, though her body trembled with exhaustion. Not more than before. Marcus studied her, seeing the strength hidden beneath her fragile appearance. Despite everything she had endured, she was still guiding him, still fighting in her own way. He admired that. "You saved me," she whispered, her voice full of wonder. "You didn't have to. You could have watched, like everyone else." Marcus's expression softened. "Where I come from, we don't stand by when someone is being broken. We fight for each other." Leora's eyes glistened. For the first time since the trial began, she felt a flicker of hope. This human, a stranger from a distant world, had given her something no one else dared: dignity. They continued down the passage, their footsteps echoing softly. The path twisted and turned, leading them deeper beneath the court. Marcus kept, his senses sharp, listening for any sign of pursuit. As they walked, Leora spoke quietly. "They wanted me broken, but I know why they feared me. I had found records, proof of their lies, their corruption. They silenced me before I could speak." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "So this wasn't about justice at all. It was about power." She nodded weakly. "Yes, and now they will hunt us both." Marcus adjusted his grip on her, his voice steady. "Then let them hunt. We'll make them regret it." In that dim corridor beneath the court, something unspoken passed between them. A bond was forming, built not on duty or tradition, but on courage and trust. Leora no longer felt like a broken princess. She felt like someone who could still rise, and Marcus, carrying her through the shadows, felt the weight not as a burden, but as a promise. The stone passage beneath the court stretched on, twisting and turning like the veins of some ancient creature. The faint light of glowing crystals flickered along the walls, casting moving shadows as Marcus carried Leora deeper into the tunnels. The silence here was heavy, a sharp contrast to the furious shouts of the nobles above. Marcus slowed his pace, his boots tapping against the stone floor. He tilted his head, listening carefully. He had been a soldier long enough to know that silence could be deceptive. The guards would not give up easily. They would send hunters. Leora stirred weakly in his arms. She opened her eyes, their silver glow faint but still beautiful. "These passages run under the whole court," she whispered. "They were built centuries ago by the first queens as escape routes. Only the royal family knows them." Marcus glanced down at her, adjusting his hold so she was more comfortable. "Good thing one of the royal family is with me then," he said softly. For the first time since the trial began, Leora almost smiled, but her face quickly grew serious. "They'll follow. The council has spies even in these tunnels." Marcus nodded. He already expected as much. "Then we'll stay ahead of them. Can you walk at all?" She tried to move her legs, but her body trembled with weakness. The ritual, the humiliation, the long crawl across the court floor, it had drained her strength. She shook her head slightly. "Not yet." Marcus didn't argue. "Then I'll carry you." His tone was simple, final, the way a soldier states his orders. Leora looked at him with quiet wonder. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. Not with pity, not with disdain, but with calm certainty. For a moment, she forgot her shame. She felt safe. They moved deeper into the tunnels. Strange sounds echoed around them. Drops of water, distant grinding stone, the faint hum of energy lines that powered the city above. Marcus kept his eyes sharp, memorizing every turn. He knew that if they became lost, their pursuers would find them easily. Finally, the passage opened into a wide underground chamber. Ancient carvings covered the walls, telling the history of Atheron's first rulers. A dry fountain stood at the center, its stone cracked with age. Marcus gently set Leora down beside the fountain so she could rest. He crouched low, scanning the edges of the chamber for danger. Why did they fear you so much? He asked at last, his voice quiet but steady. Leora's gaze drifted to the carvings. Her hand traced the image of her mother, the late queen, carved in stone. Because I learned the truth, she whispered. Before my arrest, I discovered hidden records in the archives, proof that the Council has been manipulating our people for decades. They hoard resources meant for the poor. They use the ritual of shame not to punish crime, but to destroy rivals. Her voice faltered. They killed my mother. Marcus's eyes hardened. And they blamed you, she nodded. They accused me of treason, saying I wanted to overthrow them. In truth, all I wanted was to speak the truth in front of the people. Marcus studied her face. She looked fragile, worn from pain, but in her eyes he saw fire. A fire that reminded him of the soldiers he had fought beside back on Earth. The ones who refused to break no matter the odds. Then we'll get that truth out, Marcus said firmly. We'll make the people see. Before Leora could answer, Marcus raised his hand. He had heard it, the sound of footsteps echoing down the tunnel they had come from, heavy, deliberate footsteps. The guards had found their trail. They're here, he muttered. Leora's heart raced. There's another exit, beyond that wall. She pointed to a section of the chamber where the carvings ended. But it is sealed. It requires a key stone. Marcus scanned the room quickly. His soldier's eyes caught details others might miss. On the fountain's edge lay a broken stone tablet, glowing faintly. He grabbed it, pressed it against the wall, and with a low rumble, a hidden door slid open. Come on, he said, lifting her once more. They slipped into another passage just as shadows filled the chamber behind them. Voices shouted orders, and the clatter of weapons echoed. The hunters were close. The new tunnel sloped downward. The air grew colder, and the walls were damp with moisture. Marcus moved quickly, his steps silent despite the weight he carried. He listened to every sound. The distant splash of water, the faint hum of the crystals, the echoes of pursuit. Leora clung to him, her head resting lightly against his chest. Despite her fear, she felt calm in his arms. His steady heartbeat reminded her that she was not alone. At last, the tunnel opened into a cavern filled with underground rivers. Bridges of stone crossed the flowing water, and strange glowing fish swam beneath the surface, casting shifting lights on the ceiling. But Marcus had no time to admire the beauty. He heard the hunters closing in. Hold on tight, he told Leora. He sprinted across the nearest bridge, his boots pounding against the stone. Halfway across, a shout rang out behind him. The hunters had arrived. Energy bolts sizzled through the air, striking the bridge around him. Marcus ducked and kept moving, his grip on Leora unshaken. A bolt struck the stone just behind his heel, spraying shards into the water. Faster, Leora urged. Marcus leapt across the last few steps and slid behind a column of rock for cover. He set Leora gently on her feet, though he still held her arm to steady her. His eyes scanned the cavern, searching for an escape. There! Leora pointed to a narrow tunnel high above the river. That leads to the old gardens. If we reach it, we'll be safe. Marcus's eyes followed her finger. The tunnel entrance was narrow and steep, but it was their only chance. He studied the rock face leading up to it. It would be a difficult climb, especially while carrying her. Behind them, the hunters advanced onto the bridge, their armor glowing. Marcus exhaled. All right, hold on. Without hesitation, he lifted Leora onto his back, her arms wrapping around his shoulders. Then he began to climb. His muscles strained, but he moved with steady determination. Inch by inch, hand by hand, he pulled them upward. Bolts of energy struck the rock around him, sending sparks flying. One grazed his arm, burning through his sleeve, but he did not let go. His grip only tightened. Leora pressed her face against his back, whispering. "You'll fall." "No," Marcus said firmly. "I won't." Step by step, he climbed until at last his hand reached the tunnel's edge. With a final pull, he dragged them both inside. The hunters shouted in frustration below, but they could not follow. The tunnel was too narrow for their armor. Marcus crawled forward, pulling Leora with him until they were safe inside the dark passage. He collapsed onto his knees, breathing hard. Sweat ran down his face, but his eyes still burned with determination. Leora sat beside him, trembling but alive. She looked at him with awe. "You risked everything," she whispered. "For me." Marcus met her gaze. "Not just for you, for what you represent. They tried to break you because you carry the truth, and I won't let truth be silenced." Her eyes filled with tears, but not of despair this time. For the first time since her arrest, she believed survival was possible. The tunnel led them upward until at last faint light appeared ahead. They emerged into the remains of an ancient garden, overgrown with vines and silent fountains. The air was fresh, and the city stretched out in the distance. Leora breathed deeply, her spirit lifting. She had been certain she would die in the court, but now here she was, alive, free, and carrying a spark of hope. Marcus stood beside her, scanning the city skyline. "They'll keep hunting us," he said, "but we'll stay ahead. And when the time comes, we'll show the people the truth." Leora turned to him, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. "Then let us not run forever. Let us prepare to fight." Marcus gave a rare smile. "Now you're speaking like a human." The two of them, a soldier from Earth and a fallen princess of Atheron, stood together in the ruined garden. Their escape was far from over. The council would send more hunters, more traps, more lies, but they no longer felt like prey. They felt like the beginning of something greater. The ruined garden was quiet. Ancient fountains stood dry, covered in vines. Stone benches had cracked under the weight of years, and wild plants pushed through the once perfect paths. To Princess Leora, this place was more than ruins. It was memory. Her mother had once walked here, teaching her about justice, mercy, and courage. Now those words echoed in her mind like a distant song. Marcus scanned the garden carefully, his soldier's instincts sharp. He saw no guards yet, but he knew the nobles would not give up. They would send more hunters, and each time the hunters would be faster, stronger, more determined. For now, though, they had a moment of peace. Leora sat on a stone bench, her body still weak, her silver hair falling loosely around her face. She looked at Marcus, who stood like a sentinel at the edge of the garden. His back was straight, his eyes constantly moving. "You are restless," she said softly. "I've been a soldier too long," Marcus replied, glancing back at her. "Rest doesn't come easy when you're being hunted." She studied him quietly. "Do humans always fight for others as you did for me?" Marcus was silent for a moment. His eyes seemed far away, remembering something beyond the stars of this world. "Not always," he admitted. "But we try. Back on Earth, we learned that if we don't stand for each other, then cruelty wins. And cruelty never stops on its own." Leora lowered her gaze. His words struck her heart because they reminded her of her mother. The Queen had always said the same, that power without compassion becomes tyranny. After a long pause, she spoke again. "Marcus, if we are to fight them, you must know the truth. The council did not put me on trial only to humiliate me. They did it to silence me, because I hold something they fear more than anything." She reached into the folds of her torn gown. Hidden within a seam was a tiny crystal disc, no larger than Marcus's palm. She held it out to him with trembling fingers. "This," she whispered. "This contains the records I found, evidence of the Council's crimes." Marcus took the disc carefully. The faint light inside it shimmered like liquid silver. "What's on it?" "Proof that they control the grain shipments," Leora said, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. "Whole provinces starve while the Council feasts. They sell food meant for the poor to wealthy systems beyond Atheron. And there is more. Records of secret assassinations, hidden prisons, even the death of my mother. It was no sickness, as they claimed. It was poison." Marcus clenched his jaw. "They killed your mother to keep their power," she nodded, her eyes burning with quiet fury. "And they will kill anyone else who threatens them." Marcus slipped the disc into a secure pouch on his belt. "Then we can't just run. We have to show this to the people. Once they see the truth, the Council won't be able to hide behind their rituals." Leora looked at him with a faint spark of hope. "But how? They control the broadcast towers. Only their voices reach the people." Marcus smiled faintly, though his eyes stayed sharp. "Every system has a weakness. You know the city better than I do. Show me the cracks in their walls and I'll break them open." The two of them spent the night in the garden ruins, hidden under broken stone arches. Marcus kept watch while Leora rested. His eyes scanned the sky, always alert, but his mind drifted to earth. He remembered carrying wounded comrades across muddy battlefields, swearing he would never let someone be left behind. Tonight felt the same. He was carrying not just Leora, but her people's hope. At dawn, Leora stirred. Her strength had returned slightly, enough for her to walk with Marcus's help. She led him through hidden paths at the city's edge, where few dared to go. Abandoned tunnels, old shrines, and forgotten towers became their shelter as they moved in secret. Along the way, Leora told Marcus about the old days. "My mother believed in open courts," she said quietly. "Anyone could speak, even the poorest farmer. But after her death, the Council changed everything. They silenced voices with fear. The people obey now, not because they believe, but because they are afraid." Marcus listened carefully. "Fear is powerful," he said. "But hope is stronger. We just need to give them a reason to believe again." By evening, they reached the edge of the lower city. Here the streets were narrow, the houses crowded, the air heavy with the smoke of cooking fires. Ordinary citizens lived here, far from the luxury of the nobles. Marcus pulled his hood low, keeping his human features hidden. Leora did the same, though her glowing silver hair was difficult to conceal. They walked quietly among the people, listening. They heard whispers about the trial, about the human who had dared to lift the disgraced princess. Some cursed his name, but others spoke with awe. "I saw it," one woman said to her neighbor. "He carried her like she was worth protecting. No one has ever done that." "They'll kill him for it," another replied. "And her, too." "Maybe," the first said, "but maybe not. Maybe this is the beginning." Marcus caught Leora's eyes. She had heard it too. The people were talking. The story was already spreading faster than the Council could contain. That night, they took shelter in an abandoned workshop. Dust covered the tools, and broken machines lay scattered across the floor. Marcus set a small fire in the corner to keep them warm. As Leora rested, Marcus examined the crystal disc. He tapped it against his wrist device, and a hologram flickered to life. Lines of alien script glowed in the air, along with images. Starving children in the outer provinces, warehouses filled with stolen food, ledgers of secret deals with foreign powers. One image froze Marcus's breath. It showed the queen, Leora's mother, pale and weak in her final days, and beside her stood a council noble, slipping a vial into her drink. Leora turned her face away, tears glistening in her eyes. "I always suspected," she whispered. "But seeing it, hurts more than I thought." Marcus reached out and touched her shoulder gently. "This isn't just evidence. It's a weapon. With this, you can do what they fear most. Give the people the truth." She looked at him, her eyes steady again. "Then we must find a way to broadcast it." "But how?" Marcus leaned back against the wall, thinking. "On Earth, we learned how to fight against control. If they own the towers, then we find another way. Maybe an old signal line, something they've forgotten." Leora's eyes lit faintly. "There is one, beneath the old observatory. My mother used it to send messages to the fleet in secret. The council abandoned it after her death." Marcus nodded. "Then that's where we go." The next days were a blur of movement. They crossed hidden paths, climbed over ruined walls, and slipped through the shadows of the city. More than once, they saw patrols searching for them. Posters with Leora's face and Marcus's likeness began to appear on walls. The council had declared them traitors. Yet, wherever they went, whispers followed. Whispers of the human who had defied the court. Whispers of the princess who had survived. Some citizens gave them food in secret. Others offered safe passage. Hope was spreading, and the council could not stop it. Finally, they reached the old observatory. It stood on a lonely hill outside the city, its great dome cracked but still proud. Stars glimmered above it, the same stars that shone on Earth and every other world. Inside, dust coated the floor, but the control panels still glowed faintly with power. Leora guided Marcus to the old transmitter. "This can reach every home, every street," she said. "If we connect the disc, the truth will be seen by all." Marcus placed the disc into the slot. The machine hummed to life, its lights glowing brighter. Lines of data filled the screens. But before they could activate the broadcast, a sound echoed through the hall, the heavy steps of armored boots. The hunters had found them. Marcus's hand went to his weapon, his body tense. He glanced at Leora. "Stay behind me." She shook her head, her eyes fierce. "No, this is my fight too." The doors burst open and soldiers poured inside. Their leader, a tall noble in black armor, pointed his blade at them. "You will not poison the people with your lies," he declared. Marcus stood firm. "These aren't lies. They're the truth you've been hiding." Leora stepped forward, her voice rising, clear and strong. "You cannot silence me anymore." The soldiers advanced, their weapons ready. Marcus raised his arm to defend, but Leora placed her hand on the transmitter. With a burst of light, the images from the disc filled the hall, spilling out into the sky above, across the city, across every home, every street, every province. The truth was revealed. In that moment, everything changed. The people saw the corruption, the theft, the murders. They saw the council for what it truly was. And they saw the courage of their princess, standing beside a human who defied fear itself. The nobles had tried to break her. Instead, they had given her a voice louder than ever. And Marcus, standing guard at her side, knew that the fight was only beginning. The great dome of the observatory shook as the ancient transmitter powered up. Its crystal panels glowed brighter than they had in centuries, sending streams of light through the broken roof and into the night sky. Across Atheron, in every home, every marketplace, every crowded alley, the truth was displayed. The images were undeniable. Starving families while warehouses overflowed with stolen food. Secret ledgers showing nobles trading with enemies of the people. Videos of prisons where innocents suffered. And finally, the most shocking of all, the image of the queen herself being poisoned by a council noble. The people froze where they stood. Some dropped their tools. Others abandoned their market stalls. Families gathered in silence to watch. The truth unraveled before their eyes. The ritual of shame had been meant to break the princess's dignity. Instead, it had broken the council's lies. Inside the observatory, Marcus stood tall, his body tense, shielding Leora from the soldiers who had stormed the hall. Their leader, armored in black, shouted, "Destroy the transmitter!" But it was too late. The signal had already spread across the city and beyond. Even the soldiers hesitated, their eyes catching the images of their leader's betrayal flickering across their visors. Leora stepped forward, her voice steady and clear. "People of Atheron, you have seen the truth with your own eyes. They called me a traitor, but it is they who betrayed you. They stole from you, silenced you, and killed your queen. No more. Stand with me, and we will end their rule." Her words carried across the city, broadcast with the images. The soldiers looked, uncertain now. Their spears wavered. Some lowered their weapons entirely. The leader roared in anger. "Do not listen to her! She is weak! She is disgraced!" But Marcus's voice thundered over him, strong and commanding. "Disgraced! She has shown more courage than any of you. She faced humiliation, and she rose again. That is strength. That is leadership. Humanity stands with her. Will you?" The silence broke. From outside the observatory, shouts rose. First a few, then dozens, then hundreds. "Leora! Leora!" The chant spread like wildfire through the streets. The people were rising. The noble leader realized he was losing control. With a furious snarl, he charged at Leora, his blade raised. Marcus moved instantly. He stepped between them, catching the blow with his arm shield. The force rattled him, but he held firm. With his other hand, he shoved the noble back, his voice low and dangerous. "You've had your chance. It's over." The noble swung again, but Marcus's training was sharper. He sidestepped, pulled the man's arm down, and with a soldier's efficiency, disarmed him. The blade clattered to the ground. The other soldiers hesitated, then dropped their weapons. One by one, they knelt, not to the council, but to Leora. She looked at them, her eyes filled not with pride, but with solemn duty. "Rise," she said softly. "Not as servants of corrupt masters, but as guardians of the people." By dawn, the city was alive with revolt. Citizens flooded the streets, no longer afraid. They tore down the banners of the council and stormed the warehouses to release food to the hungry. Soldiers abandoned their posts, joining the uprising. Instead of resisting, the council nobles retreated to the grand court, desperate to hold on to power. They called for loyalty, for tradition, for obedience. But their words rang hollow. The people no longer believed. At the head of the uprising walked Princess Leora, her steps strong despite her exhaustion. Beside her walked Marcus, his uniform torn, his arm bruised, but his spirit unshaken. When they reached the court, the gates were already surrounded by thousands. The nobles, trembling, tried to escape, but the people dragged them into the arena where they had once humiliated Leora. Now the court was filled not with cruel laughter, but with chants for justice. The nobles cried out for mercy. "We are the council! We are the law!" Leora's voice rose above them. "No, you are tyrants. The law belongs to the people." She turned to the crowd. "For years, they forced us to watch as they destroyed the innocent. They humiliated us with false trials. But today, we reverse the ritual. Today, the ones who shamed others will face their own shame." The people roared with approval. The nobles were stripped of their jeweled robes, their crowns torn away. They were forced to kneel in the very place where Leora had once crawled. Now it was their turn to taste humiliation. Leora stood tall, no longer the broken princess, but the true heir of her mother's legacy. She lifted her hand, and the crowd fell, silent. "We will not kill them," she declared. That is their way. Fear and blood. We will show them a different way. Let them live, but let them live as equals, stripped of power, stripped of privilege. Let them walk among those they once oppressed. The crowd roared again, louder than before. It was not vengeance they cheered for, but justice. Marcus watched from her side, his heart steady. He had seen many leaders in his life, but none who carried themselves like this young woman who had once been forced to crawl. Humanity had brought her courage, but she had found her own strength. Days turned into weeks. The old council was dissolved. A new assembly was formed, one made of citizens, workers, soldiers, and farmers. Leora guided them, her wisdom shaped by her suffering. The people trusted her, not because of her bloodline, but because she had shared their pain and refused to give in to fear. Marcus became known across Atheron as the human who had lifted the fallen princess. Songs were sung of his defiance in the court, of his climb across the cavern, of his stand in the observatory. But Marcus himself never sought fame. He remained at Leora's side, her protector and advisor, a bridge between Earth and Atheron. Together, they built something new. The ritual of shame was abolished. In its place, a festival of truth was created, where once a year leaders stood before the people to answer their questions openly. One evening, as the twin moons rose above the city, Marcus and Leora stood on a balcony overlooking the rebuilt court. The air was filled with music and laughter from the streets below. "You changed everything," Marcus said quietly. Leora looked at him with a gentle smile. "No, Marcus, we changed everything. You gave me the courage to rise when I thought I was broken. And you gave your people hope," Marcus replied. He paused, then added, "Back on Earth, we say that freedom is never given. It is taken back by those who refuse to bow." She nodded. "Then let us make sure we never bow again." For a moment they stood in silence watching the people celebrate. Two very different beings, one from Earth, one from Atheron, but united by a shared belief that dignity and justice were worth any cost. Far beyond the city, in the quiet halls of abandoned council chambers, dust gathered on empty thrones. The nobles who once ruled in cruelty now walked among ordinary citizens, their power gone. Some learned humility, others lived in bitterness, but none could forget the day the people rose, led by a princess who had been forced to crawl and a human who chose to carry her. That story spread across the stars. Other worlds heard of the human who defied an empire's cruelty. Other rulers trembled, for they knew their people might one day demand the same. And across those stars one truth became clear. Humanity had earned its place not with wealth, not with armies, but with compassion. For Marcus and Leora, their journey was far from over. Challenges would come, enemies would rise, but they were no longer alone, no longer hunted, no longer broken. They had reversed the court, and together they would help build a galaxy where no one would ever be forced to crawl again.